Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and this is my wrap-up for the books that I read in the second half of November. So I read a total of 8 books this month, which is a little bit farther behind than I would like to be, but I guess that's not too bad. But the thing that sucks is that I actually only finished 2 books in the second half of November. So I read 6 books in the first half, and then the second half of the month I only read 2 books. I mean, I actually read several books. I just didn't finish all of them, so I'm going to talk about the ones that I didn't actually finish in my December TBR, so keep an eye out for that in the next couple days. Until then, these are the books that I finished in the second half of November. The first book that I finished in the second half of November is The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid, and this follows the story of Nemesis, who is a diabolic, and diabolics are basically genetically engineered humans that are like grown in a lab, but they're like way stronger, and they don't have tear ducts because they don't really need to cry, and they just have like killer instincts and all this craziness. And so basically, Nemesis is a diabolic who was created to protect a senator's daughter named Sidonia. So then, when Sidonia is summoned to the Emperor's court to be a hostage, Nemesis goes in her place. And so I definitely was interested in this book because it's an outer spacey sci-fi, and I really like outer spacey sci-fis, and since we get so few of them in the realm of young adults, I just always kind of jump right on it when there's a young adult, like, outer spacey sci-fi. I was not as impressed with this book as I hoped that I would be, and basically what it comes down to is that for everything that was absolute genius, that was actually very different and super interesting, there was also something else that just was too tropey or too like overused or just stupid or whatever it was. So for instance, the author does a really good job, like, writing this character whose point of view we follow, who isn't quite human and doesn't have, like, the same human thought process or anything, so it was really fascinating to read, like, from her point of view, because her reactions to stuff is completely different from what a normal person's would be, and so the author did a great job capturing that, but all the other characters just felt to me like cardboard cutouts, or they were just kind of like not really, we didn't get to know them very well. So when people died or anything like that, I kind of didn't really feel anything, that sort of thing. So I think that it was lacking in other characters besides the protagonist, and I feel like we could have gotten to know those people a lot more, and then everything that happened would have had a greater impact on me. And then I thought that the world was really interesting, and because it was totally not the same as a lot of other like dystopian things. It definitely had some very unique aspects to it, but at the same time I felt like a lot of parts of the plot were just too convenient, and just didn't really make any sense. And there were also some plot holes and some things that didn't really have like a reason for happening. So, for example, there's a part where a viceroy gets killed off so that she can be replaced with somebody else, when really, like, you don't have to kill off a viceroy to replace them with somebody else. That, like, literally, you can just say, okay, you're not the viceroy anymore. Who wants to be the viceroy? Okay, you. Like, literally, because basically in this world, senators' jobs are actually hereditary. Like they're like the nobility and whatnot, but viceroys still aren't. So it made no sense for like a viceroy to get killed off solely so that somebody else could replace her. That made no sense. So I just pay way too much attention to like the political intrigue aspect of like every goddamned book I read. So stuff like that just jumps out at me sometimes as stuff that I just kind of go, what the heck is going on? So I was also really fascinated though because I kind of wondered how on earth Nemesis would be taking Sidonia's place. And so I was really confused about, okay, so can diabolics like change their appearance or what's going on here? So I read the book, and it's really interesting the way that they actually do that. So in this world, body modifications are the norm. Like, you could literally have a different skin color and hair color every day of the week if you want to. It's like super easy. Or you could even have a different nose every day if you want to. Like, it's like basically changing what you look like is the equivalent of putting on makeup in this world. So it's super, super easy. And so since nobody had actually met Sidonia in person because everyone interacted with her on a virtual reality thing, they basically just knew that she probably had dark skin because her parents do or something. So basically just changing Sidonia's like skin color and hair and stuff like that is like super easy. And so it's just really fascinating the way that aspect of this world works. And it also kind of reminded me a little bit of Oryx and Crake, which is my all-time favorite book, because like people in that book get hair transplants, for goodness sake. Like, it's just really interesting the way that this book kind of did that. So there were definitely some very unique aspects to this book, but I just felt like the plot, like a lot of aspects of the plot just weren't as interesting as I would have hoped. The next book that I finished in the second half of November is The Industry by Rose Foster, and I ended up picking this up because the Around the World-a-thon was going on, and I know that this book is an Australian book with an Australian main character, etc., etc., but it didn't take place in Australia for as much of the book as I would have hoped. It's basically just the very beginning. So anyway, this book follows a girl named Kira who is kidnapped because she goes online and solves this puzzle. So then an organization called The Industry kidnaps her and wants her to break codes for them. So basically, I thought that this was a pretty interesting concept and everything, but I thought it was also a little bit far-fetched that she would be only like one of 3 people who is known to have ever been able to break the code, and that it's so like that there are no rules to it. It just makes sense, and so very few people can do it. That just seemed kind of weird to me. And then also the twist I saw coming from the very beginning, and so that kind of made me annoyed because that, like, I mean, the book keeps dropping little clues like, hey, you can figure it out maybe, blah de blah, and I'm just like, dude, do the main characters really not see what's going on here? Like, really? Come on. But overall, this book isn't that bad. It's actually pretty okay. Like, I still gave it 3 stars. And this also had my one of my things that is coming up in my Bookish Pet Peeves Part 2 video, and that is the trope of the sad loner girl who has no friends. So Kira has literally, in this book, never had a friend in her life, and she's 16 years old. And so usually, you know, like, I'm okay with a character having never had a friend if there's, like, a reason for it. I feel like we always kind of get, like, when there's a sad loner girl who has no friends, she's a perfectly nice, pretty, smart girl who should have friends. And so the fact that she has no friends never makes sense. So the fact that, like, that is such a huge part of this book, and why she falls into so many traps throughout the book, I literally was like, how could she possibly have never had a friend in her life? And finally, the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst, and I've actually not quite finished this book. I have another 100 pages to go, so I'm sure I will finish this very, very soon, like probably today, but I really don't have time tomorrow or anything to film this video, so I figured I would just talk about it now. And I will do a full review of this book once I do finish it to make up for the fact that I'm talking about it sort of preemptively. But basically this book is about a princess who has been engaged to a prince since she was like 6 years old. So she goes to that kingdom and she falls in love with the prince's sister. And so that is just super awesome. So this book is about gay princesses, and that makes me really, really happy. It is also an Own Voices book as well, because Audrey Coulthurst is married to a woman. So I am definitely really enjoying this book, but basically I feel like a lot of the plot, aside from the love story, is a little bit, it's just not as high stakes, I feel like, and yet the love story doesn't start until at least 100 pages in, if not 200 pages. So I feel like I would have liked to see more of the girls falling in love and less of the, like, other stuff, I feel like, but, And a lot of the characters, besides the two of them, really do feel like really background people, and we don't really get to know a whole lot about them. But I do love the queer aspect of this book. Like, the narration kind of suggests that it's pretty typical for two men or two women to fall in love. And so I really like how the problem with the two of these girls falling in love isn't the fact that they're both women, it's the fact that one of them is engaged to the other one's brother. And so that's why it's like all taboo and all this stuff, because queer relationships in this book are not that weird and they're a lot more commonplace than your typical medieval fantasy society, I guess. So I really like that aspect of this book because it really shows, you know, how when you're queer and you're writing a book, like, it's just part of your life. I really am enjoying this book. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's super important, and I will definitely do a full review once I finish the last like 100 pages that I have left, which I am super excited to read. And that is it for my wrap up for the second half of November. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!